My name's Edmund Marriage and I'm here with Michael Tellinger. Michael's come over from South Africa to the Stars and Stones Winter Forum. That's November 2009. We've got a great list of speakers. I'm talking about the proof of an advanced civilization, and Michael's going to be speaking about South Africa, the gold mines, and the very interesting evidence of clever human species in South Africa. And we're going to talk about who these people were and how closely related they were to us Homo sapiens. Probably the same species or variations of the same species. But Michael, we were talking earlier about the most interesting aspect of our human species is the current genetic research on the M158 marker of everybody on the planet on the male Y chromosome, to show that whether we're pink or black or khaki or whatever colour we happen to be, we all go back to a single male at 50,000 BC. And that dispels quite a lot of the racist arguments, I think. But let's have a look and see what your take is on that. And we touched on that other issue about the first and second chromosomes being fused on us, our species, which sets us apart from chimpanzees, if you like, and other closely related species.
Yeah, thanks, Edmund. It's a great pleasure to be here, and my first venture outside of South Africa to talk about my research and my findings, and also to spread the word and the message of discovering these ancient civilizations in South Africa and being able to present the first tangible evidence of this advanced ancient civilizations on Earth that I believe we all originate from. And that's really exciting because nobody has ever seen this evidence. And so I feel somewhat compelled to take this message out and share it with the world, otherwise it might just die with me, which has happened in the past. So here we are. To come back to your opening statement about the chromosome 2 and 3 being fused, that's an absolutely phenomenal bit of genetic evidence that I believe we have for the argument that we are a manipulated species, genetically manipulated species, and there can be absolutely no doubt about that. But I think you can take it even further, and if you look at top geneticists, just like top physicists, when they go beyond the stage of quantum physics, and they get into quantum physics and they get out the other side, they become what we often call mad scientists, because they suddenly realize nothing is real and it shouldn't exist, and they start studying really more advanced and highfalutin stuff that people go, oh, well, these guys have gone mad. Well, the same applies to geneticists. Once they start studying the genome and they realize that, oh my God, things are not the way we thought they were, they start losing it. And there have been a number of leading geneticists worldwide that have come out in the open and made very, crazy statements like, the human race is not from this earth. Our DNA is not from this earth. And they've made such statements. And yet there are people that go against their statements and their research and say, it's a bunch of rubbish, which is always the case. I'm well used to that. Everything that I've been researching and discovering in South Africa has been poo-pooed by the media, and the academics said, it's a bunch of rubbish, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And so I'm used to that by now.
Well, we're all pushing the boundaries of knowledge, and that's our job, the secular pursuit of knowledge. This is what we should all be doing, and trying to discover much more about our lives. I think it's Socrates says the unexamined life is not worth living.
Yeah.
And that's a good motto to have, really, isn't it? So let's open the debate, let's talk about these various things. The background to my subject is the restart of civilization, 9,300, 9,500 BC, at the end of the Younger Dryas. We had a snowball Earth, a big freeze, very, very cold. And when the Earth began to, or the climate temperature record, which was flying up and down, suddenly settled down after this large lumps of debris, the final large lumps from a supernova explosion came smashing through our own solar system. We have the Earth axis shift, a large object coming by to provide the torque that tipped the Earth on its axis, and multiple impacts, well recorded now and talked about by Richard Firestone et al. in the cycle of cosmic catastrophes. But we clearly get a small group of survivors, managed to survive somewhere on the planet, the worst or biggest mass extinction for 3.5 million years, survivors coming to a valley in the Lebanon, which was a glacial refuge of some of the important plants, particularly 80% of the grasses, which involve cereals. And we see that small group of survivors having to start all over again for us. They are the archangels, the angels, the watchers, the culture bearers who are talked about with all civilizations following that time, and the provision of agriculture and civilization as such. But what has always puzzled me is that they appear to be very tall people, and as soon as we start talking about very tall people, then we're out with everybody else because we're not talking about the conventional line. And what I want to pursue with you is we have skeletons of people who are 8 or 9 feet tall. I've got a photograph of our species, Sapiens sapiens, very tall, with a Roman emperor just under 9 feet tall, perfectly normal, able to fight 5 men at a time. Another man, the child of Hale in the Middle Ages, the same. It wasn't a pituitary gland problem. So giants in those days. So we're looking at a very tall version of our species, for some reason. May have something to do with the fact that we lost a large chunk of the atmosphere, and under that much denser atmosphere we had larger species, which we're proving in tanks with fish, where we recreate the pressures of a more dense atmosphere. We get much larger species that live twice as long, for example. That's well-established science. Then we come to South Africa and look at Boskop man, who clearly is about 6 foot tall and has 3 times the capacity, brain capacity, that we do.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know if it's quite 3 times. It's probably twice as much. But I know my friend Pieter Wagner, Professor Pieter Wagner in South Africa, is crazy about the Boskop skull, and he believes it should be out there for the whole world to see, and yet it's kept in a drawer in a museum. You know, he had to pull a few strings the other day to go and let the curator take it out of the drawer and show it to him. So I'm sure he sent you the photograph.
Yes, I've seen the photograph. That's what staggered me, and the fact that the concept was that we had maybe 2 or 3 different variations of our Homo sapiens species who were wiped out with this massive catastrophe.
Well, you know what I often start my slave species presentation, not the one I'm doing here, but my slave species presentation, I often start with, we're not the human race. We're the human races. I know that it slightly flies in the face of what you said right up front. However, just like we don't really know the origins of humankind, the origins of our species, it's a murky pool of water that we're looking into, and we're all seeing. Some of us are seeing similar things, some of us are seeing completely different things, and we're extracting as much information as we can. But I find this interesting, and I think the race thing is the more I research the race thing, the more I'm beginning to realize that the race segregation was almost consciously done and created through genetic manipulation as well, to play as a card of separation, like the Tower of Babel. You know, let us destroy the language so they can't be like one, and they can't become like us. And the more you separate people, the more you segregate them, the race card has been played against the people themselves for thousands and thousands of years. And so when I started realizing that, it suddenly started making sense. But that's not really what we're talking about. But it's an interesting diversion from the subject of human origins. The race is a big problem that we need to deal with.
Yeah, my take on that is I see exactly where you're coming from. My take on that was that what was so crucial, particularly from survivors of global catastrophe, where we were nearly wiped out completely, that the city-state system, which I believe started as early as Jericho, 9000 BC, we see certainly a separation, but the separation was amongst the trades and crafts. And so a community, a town, small town like Jericho, had to have a whole number of craftsmen and trades. And we see them all working and functioning at those very early dates. And the city-state system, in my mind, was a perfect system of social organisation where there was equality for all within the separate trades and crafts. But everybody was dependent on each other because they were trying to start again from near wipeout. And so the king was elected. He had to do his 20 years training. The stonemason was the same. In Mari, much later, 2,500 BC, we have over 200 craft trades and guilds. And it was because of the way they integrated together under the leadership of a well-picked man, if you like, or a well-qualified
who represented
man,
the people.
Who represented the interests of the people.
Interest of the people, exactly.
And then we had our, if you like, small, not big committees, but just the few elders. But the elders were selected from the master craftsmen, the people who proved themselves in their trades. And so everybody who was involved in the running of that unity, of that brilliant system, in my mind, the city-state system, which lasted right the way through the Golden Age. That was the Golden Age, no doubt in my mind, until another catastrophe came along, which they thought was going to be as bad as the last one. Hence the building of the pyramids and all the structures, not for dead bodies, to keep people alive. Totally different concept of what we are told by our archaeologists. So we did have a fantastic system. No priests, no politicians. Even Sir Alan Gardner talks about Egypt and said they had no word for religion. The nearest word they had was Heka, which meant magical powers. And so religion is a modern concept, and I believe that race is a totally modern concept. And we find the abuses of race, but the original laws and edicts of An and Enlil were totally benevolent. And Plato supports that. Many of the other great historians support that. But I see exactly where you're coming from on this one.
There are three interesting points that you raised. First of all, just the race thing, which I want to talk about after the Y chromosome, and then the organized social structure, which leads me to my new philosophy, which I'm going to launch a new book about, which I call ContributionISM, which is a new world order. I use that specifically, a new world order for a post-capitalistic, post-materialistic world without money and value. Okay, and that is a whole new take on what where we should be going, and for a more spiritually enlightened planet. That's where I believe we should be going, because money, if I can use the word evil, is the root of all evil. And we all know that, we all say it all the time, and yet we do nothing about it. And we allow these bloody politicians to steal the countries away from us. We allow the political systems to control our lives through the bankers. We allow all this stuff to happen, and yet we're in control. So that I've devised, and as I've been researching this for 4 years now, and my new book should be coming out in the next year. It's called ContributionISM, and it's a system that's probably going to be very loosely based on what you mentioned.
Well, I think that there's nothing new under the sun to the wise man.
Exactly.
And I think that if we go back and look in detail at the Golden Age, we will find superb social organisation, because these problems have been solved before, and they were certainly solved in the way in which the best of those city-states operated, under a king as a key person to act in the interests of the people, serve the people, which is basically what our monarchs have done recently. But we had a takeover of the Catholic Church after the donation of Constantine, where the Church chose the kings and the queens. The Church took the role on, and then didn't follow the route that Constantine wanted, which was this secular pursuit of knowledge of the old British Church and the Druidic colleges, Druidic universities, Bangor-on-Dee, key places of learning, which survived right until the time of the Battle of Chester in, I think, 612 or 14, when 2,000 monks were slaughtered. But that was what was left of the Druidic academies, and Christianity in Britain was almost on a par with the Druidic high culture of Britain, which had served this country incredibly well up to the time of the Roman invasion. So I'm going around a lot of subjects there, but I'm saying that we can relearn from past knowledge and re-establish a far-ordered society, and this requires a major rethink on part of people who are very religious, and a major rethink on people who think that political solutions and that the majority of the people know what to do which isn't true.
They don't know what
we
to
have
do.
to go back
Yeah.
to our master craftsmen in each of the trades.
Look at the state we find ourselves in as a species. I mean, it's ridiculous. Do you believe that anybody out there wants to be on a planet like this? I don't think a single person in the world will raise their hand if you ask people out there, except the super rich, obviously, because the super rich are those that feel they're in a complete state of control and power. They control large empires and large companies and corporations, and they control countries. Well, those will be the guys that will raise their hand. Otherwise, everybody else feels more and more pressurized and more enslaved by the system that we find ourselves in. And we've allowed it to get there because mainly through ignorance. Unfortunately, no matter how smart we think we are, there are a smarter group of people and a more powerful group of people that are pulling the strings. You can call them the Illuminati, you can call them the Bilderbergers, you can call them the Anunnaki remnants, you can call them whatever you want. Give them a name, I don't care. They are pulling the strings, they are controlling our lives in a way that 99.9% of the people on this planet are completely oblivious to. They have no idea what's going on, and they think they're living this life of waking up in the morning. From the moment you take your first breath till the day you die, it's all about money. I mean, it's sick. It's all about money. And people that deny that are living in denial. It's simple. But I'm going off the subject a little bit. I want to come back to that 50,000, 60,000 year exodus from southern Africa. It's a very important moment for me. And that Y chromosome identification that you said it came from a single male, which is beautiful evidence for one thing. Because the mitochondrial DNA in females suggests something else. It suggests going back in time a lot further than the males. But what that Y chromosome male, coming out somewhere in Tanzania, Malawi, I think they picked up that chromosome, if I'm not mistaken. But somewhere on the border of Malawi and Tanzania, which is just north of South Africa. Okay, and that means that 60,000 years ago, there was already a group of males that must have lived for thousands of years before that. But they don't know how much longer they lived. Because when there was an exodus, they got to that point in time, and that's where they pick it up. Because we haven't found any skeletons further south. Well, let me tell you what, we're about to start digging and uncovering some really old skeletons. And I believe we're going to find skeletons with 22 pairs of chromosomes. Because in Genesis, and it was in Genesis 2, when Eve was not even created. And God already says, I'll take you to the land of Havilah, where the land is good, the water is good, and there is gold. Because I want you to dig the bloody gold for me. That's what I want you to do, you damn slave. You know? And so Eve's not even created, and God is already obsessing with gold. It doesn't make any sense. The Sumerian tablets tell us how the male, how a partner was created for the male. How they took the essence from the rib. It's virtually identical to the story in the Bible. And they took the essence from the rib and they created a partner so that they could procreate. When they created the partner, they created the 23rd pair of chromosomes. The X and the Y pair of chromosomes. And from then, you suddenly get Homo sapiens with 23 pairs of chromosomes. So I believe that there was a stage in human, as part of the human origins, the created, the manipulated and cloned species in southern Africa called the Lulu Amelu and Adamu, where the name Adam comes from, and that was a male population, no females. Those early slaves from 280,000 years ago until about I'm not quite sure how long that lasted because not enough evidence has come out for that. But that first section, until Genesis 2, when God says, I'll create you a mate so you can procreate, it was all males, and they were all slaves mining, gold mining. So we have the mitochondrial Eve that we can trace back all the way back. Why? Because the females that were used to give birth to the males were of a different genetic strain. And that's why you can pick up the mitochondrial genetics line further back in time than you can the male genetic line. And that becomes beautiful. And that's why there's a discrepancy.
Well, here we are. We've had our brief discussion, and I hope we've sparked a lot of interest from the listeners or viewers. We clearly need to remove these traditional establishment barriers to understanding more about our past. And clearly we now have the human genome, we have the skeletons to look at, Boskop and the very large Homo sapiens species. We just need to be more open and realise that there was a restart of civilization at 9,300 and begin to look at those people who restarted to see what their genealogy was, if you like, or where we originate from, and to look at this out of Africa theory in more detail, because it's well established we have an out of Africa theory for everybody on the planet, and we haven't gone back into Africa as you have to look at what must have been a reality. We see so many varieties of other species. Why not more varieties of human species? We're all well aware of Neanderthal, but let's go and look for the 3 or 4 other species of humans who are current with the last 100,000 years and work out what went on. And that is the future for us to resolve who our ancestors were, who were the good guys, maybe who were the bad guys, and let's try and rebuild a world on the basis of what was proven to be successful in the past with the fantastic golden age city-state system. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much.